Hi, I'm Matt Knudsen, writer-director of Cassidy Red,
Hey, and I'm Brooks Yang, the producer of the same movie.
here with Chris Gordon on Hellblazer Biz.
Hey everyone, I have the honour and the privilege to talk with Matt Knudsen and Brooks Yang of the film Cassidy Red, who Matt is the director and Brooke is the producer. So, hey guys, how are you?
Excellent. Nice to be here.
Yeah, you too. I appreciate you joining me. We'll carry on and crack on with the film. I've actually just watched it again. I was sent the screener by Nicole. So I have seen the film, so that has been a bit of a sticking point in some interviews I've done, because I get the interviews and I don't get sent the film in advance, so I'm trying to find my way around. But it makes it a good experience because I enjoy the film afterwards. Then
Yeah, it tends to go a little smoother when we're all talking about a film that we're familiar with.
It is, yeah. So yeah, I've got a few questions to put towards you to try and obviously get to know you guys a bit better and find out where the film came from and inspirations and things like that. So first of all, I mean, Matt, yourself, you've been involved in a lot in cinematography, and I've noticed that was the background. So kind of, what made you decide to go into directing and writing from where you come from?
You know, honestly, like as an adolescent or even into my high school years, it was basically doing all three. It was writing and directing and shooting my own stuff. And then when I got into undergraduate university, I really caught the cinematography bug and actually understood what it meant to light a set. And I don't know, I got kind of geeky about all the technical stuff and a lot of the, apertures and foot candles and all those sorts of fun things. And so for a long time, that's just where I was able to find work. And I kind of neglected some of the writing and directing. I got really into music videos, and that required much less screenwriting on my part. Mm-hmm. So for a lot of years, I was just working as an electrician, working as a camera assistant, working a little bit as a cinematographer, but mostly, kind of below the line grunt work. And then somewhere along the line, I realized I didn't really want to be. I didn't think I would ever have the technical aptitude to be a professional cinematographer. Just as cameras continued to change, the technology continued to change, I realized I was just never going to keep up with that.
Right.
And I still kind of like wanted to tell my own stories. And just decided I needed to get back into kind of like writing my own stuff, directing my own stuff, working with actors again. So I got into a graduate program at UCLA. That's where I met Brooks and got to spend a lot more time writing, a lot more screenwriting classes, and slowly but surely kind of wean myself off the need to be my own cinematographer and learn to collaborate with cinematographers who actually are much more accomplished than I am. But I liked being able to bring a little bit of that knowledge and experience to the table, so that I wasn't the kind of director who didn't know anything about lenses, who didn't know anything about apertures. Like I like being able to talk shop with the DP and being able to like step away from that and allow our DP, in this case Julia Swain, to do her thing and really be able to flex her muscles, and then I can go play with the actors or go futz with the script.
Excellent. That's really, I was going to say for you, Brooks.
Yeah. I was just going to add that as a producer, that really Matt having that background always really helps, especially when we are in hard pre-production and working with scheduling and all of that. He has a real understanding of what it's like to be a crew member as well as directing the crew, and I think that gives that helps him get like the respect and camaraderie of a lot of the people, especially because people are working for we're all like film students or aspiring indie filmmakers, so that's the kind of thing that really helps drive people and get everybody working together, because they know what it's like. He knows what it's like to work on a lot of their shoots.
Yeah, no, that's good, and it's something I've picked up a lot from people I speak to. I mean, I've spoken to TJ Scott, the director, as well, and Dennis Illick, who's a cinematographer, from those kind. And TJ was great because he's got exactly the same. That's where he came from. He's very good with his photography skills. And you're right. I think from a lot of the actors I've spoken to, when a director knows, a lot about the other areas as well, it means the production comes together a lot more. Like you just said, you get more respect from people you're working with because you understand everything. You're not just direct. You're not telling people and ordering people what to do. You actually know the job yourself. But I can imagine how hard that would be, because especially if you've got the eye for something, and it's like your cinematographer might be saying, well, actually, we can do it this way. I can see where you might sometimes have to go, okay, and take the back seat for being a cinematographer yourself.
Yeah, it came actually easier than I expected it to. I thought they were gonna have to like pull the camera away from me, from my cold dead hands, because I loved operating so much. But it actually came like once it got to the point where I realized I wasn't gonna have to be doing the calculations and dealing with ratios and like basically all the math that I didn't have to deal with or worry about anymore. That I was very easy then to be like, okay, that's fine. You can deal with that stress. I'm happy to talk shop about focal length and stuff, but I don't really want to have to talk about compression or lighting ratios or bit rates. Like back, because I was trained basically Super 8 and Super 16. Like that was my wheelhouse, and that was great because it was always the same. It had been the same for decades, right?
Yeah.
But nowadays, you basically have to learn a new system almost every month, and that's just not something I ever wanted to keep up with. So. If we ever go back to shooting film, then maybe I might look into picking up a camera again, because that would get me very excited, but I just don't think that's going to happen.
Well, I think you and Julia, the cinematographer, have a really strong, creative connection too, which I think helps, when it feels like you guys are talking the same language. I wasn't a big part of those conversations all the time when you guys were shortlisting, but it always seemed like you guys really clicked. You'd worked together before on another film, a short film. And so when you had a creative idea in mind, it seemed like she could then translate that into the specifics of execution pretty well.
Well, there's nothing better than being on set with her and just seeing her like completely like just steam erupting for, like being totally frustrated, and then figuring out how I can fix her problem, and then coming up with an idea for her and just seeing her eyes light up and being like, oh yeah, we could completely, or the opposite, when like I'm completely fatigued and don't know how we're going to make our day, and then she comes up with a quick fix. Like that was the best part of that collaboration. It was just so nice to just see the light bulb go off. It completely turns your mood around completely.
Oh yeah, there's something I was going to mention later on, but I'll bring it in now, is the fact that the cinematography in the film I actually really liked. There was a lot of really nice shots in there. There was some great, I think it was when Court was talking originally, no, not Court, sorry, it was Tom. It was a flashback scene, and he sort of moved out into the darkness, and I just loved that, because he just faded completely into black when he walked out, and it was just a nice little transition through. I just thought it was very sweet. But obviously there's lots of nice landscape transitions, and not that I know what I'm talking about, transition was the word, but you know what I mean. There's lots of nice shots in the film as it goes through, and from one scene to the other, it really does, it works very, very well. I think I know the scene you're talking about, and the only reason I'll embellish on it is just because I remember there being a big problem where he was too dark and we couldn't see his face, and there was a very specific line that he needed to deliver, and we had to cover it like in a oneer, and it was that situation where Julia was just pulling her hair out because she's like, we can't see his face, what are we going to do? And then it was just as simple as the actor saying, well, what if when I like point at him, I just I'll have a lantern in my hand and I'll just point. And when he points at the guy, he just brings the lantern up perfectly and gives himself the exposure just for that one line. And it's just one of those magical moments where it's like, the clouds part, and you're like, yep, we got it, let's roll. Fantastic. How have you felt doing a feature film? Because I know you've done a lot of shorts as well. So how have you felt working on the longer feature film? Because this must be a big difference from. You've done a couple of features, I know, but.
Yeah, this is the first thing I've ever, first like feature in a directorial capacity, but worked on a whole bunch below the line, and I always liked the kind of marathon of it all. Like I liked that kind of schedule, and there's just something a lot more satisfying about getting to the end of 3 weeks or a month or 6 weeks on something bigger, and really feeling like you've been through a journey with your crew and like you've achieved something together. I think that there have been great shorts, and the short subjects is a really interesting avenue to work in. My sensibilities and my storytelling style and the kinds of art that I get excited about is almost always in that 90-minute to 2 hours and 10 minutes. Like I just like that sort of frame to work within. So this was a lot more comfortable for me, but yeah, everything just gets compounded, right? And if I didn't have an incredible support system starting with Brooks, then the entire thing could have completely crumbled, because we're basically working with a bunch of students who are used to working on shorts. Very few of them have any feature experience.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just taking all those same kinds of like skills we've been kind of nurturing together and just, blowing it up into a month-long endeavor. So, I mean, it's very easy for me to say I enjoyed it so much more because I wasn't like doing as much of the heavy lifting or equipment schlepping as I have in the past.
Yeah.
But to me, this is the type of environment I want to be working in a, feature capacity.
Fantastic. And I mean, you did mention it as well that you actually wrote this as a thesis, as a film project for the MFA directing program. So how do you feel, if you've written it as a thesis, how does it feel knowing that this is now being released, it's going to be seen everywhere, it's, because not everyone who writes a thesis, for example, and we get this kind of exposure and this sort of success from.
Well, thank you. That's nice of you to say. I will see. I mean, ultimately, we're so far removed now from where we started. I mean, it'll be basically 3 years this May since we did like our first Kickstarter crowdsourcing thing. Mm-hmm. And it'll be 3 years in August. It'll be 3 years since we shot. So we've come a long way. And I'm definitely in the mindset of like, this is great. I've had an incredible experience. I'm so grateful to everybody who said nice things about the film, but I would love for this to be a springboard into getting to make more films with this team. Like ultimately that's what I hope comes from all this. And I hope that everybody who worked on the film from the cast on can explore further opportunities as a result of, whatever modicum of success the film can find.
Excellent. No, that's a great ethos to have, and it's nice to see that, you want to boost everybody up as well as which is a great thing to see.
Well, the nice thing about having spent a lot of time being humbled professionally, financially, artistically in my life is that it does give you that sense of like, oh yeah, we all need to like let's work towards a rising tide lifting all boats.
Mm-hmm.
Like the best thing about this entire process has been not only getting to work with the team, but also like. For example, one of the, David, one of the actors we're talking about, just immediately got cast in another Western right after ours. And I'd like to think that we had a little bit of something to do with it,
He got to play the hero this time. So it's kind of fun, actually. We saw a picture at Walmart stores where our DVDs are on sale. Mm-hmm. And right next to our DVD is the other DVD where he gets to play the hero. So I keep telling people, like, you got to rent both or buy both. Do like a double feature night with David.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 2 sides of the coin. That'd be great. No, it's good. I mean, the indie film and the independent film is a very strong network as well, and I find that a lot of the people I'm a big supporter of independent film because I think you get some really cracking storylines. Within an independent film that you might not necessarily see in a big blockbuster. Because not that I'm gonna attack blockbuster films or anything like that, because I'd love one day to have some of the people on my show to talk to. But when a blockbuster film, they throw money at it, so they throw effects at it, and they might not necessarily get the story. Whereas things like Cassidy Red, for example, is very much the story involved in there. I mean, obviously everything else is great. I'm not saying the production's any different, because look, I actually watched that film, and I would think that it was something that could come out of a Hollywood film because it was done so well. But yeah, you just get a deeper integral storyline, I think, with independent film. And I've spoken to a lot of independent actors, and they've all said very, very similar things, that they want to boost each other up and they want to help each other get through. And I love that about this part of the industry, is the fact that it's very close knit and there's a lot of supportive people out there. So yeah, it's good to find some more.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the dream is to be working in a situation where we have the resources to be able to compensate everybody properly, mm-hmm. but not be working in such a big environment that we have to then start to compromise all those things you're talking about, right? Like, I really think that, like, for better or for worse, that dream of working right in that middle ground of everybody gets compensated, everybody can make a living, everybody feels, satisfied, we're not working 14-hour days, but also on small enough things that we don't feel beholden to, I don't know, the man, if you will. But then again, that's sort of like that what do you call it? Like the middle class filmmaking dream, which unfortunately a lot of people seem to believe is kind of dying out. So
yeah,
I think for us, the limitations that we're working under for insurance reasons and really like banal logistics that I was running around working out. I think Matt was kind of able to work with those as constraints and make them work in a lot of really interesting ways. Like you'll notice that, nobody who ever has a line is ever on a horse because that just costs a whole lot more. But, you have to have horses. It's a Western. So we found all these like kind of creative workarounds, and I think it kind of stretches your story in a lot of ways and makes you really have to think through, how we're going to do the shootouts and all the gunplay and everything, which I'm really proud of how our big shootout scene turns out, because we had to be so precise and specific about how we show everything.
Yeah.
Because of how sparing we had to be with all those like gun hits and everything.
Well, yeah, you're right, everything does cost. Why does it cost more to have a line from when you're spoken on a horse? Just out of interest.
Insurance stuff, and it's also because the people who are actually riding the horses are people who are also the wranglers,
right.
And who actually deal with horses. So we didn't want to have a conversation. Are people two people talking, walking, and riding a horse? Just then you have to get the camera on the horse and all kinds of things. So.
Right, okay.
I think SAG has an issue too, right? Like if you actually put a SAG actor on a horse, it bumps you up into like a different tax bracket or something, right? Or insurance,
like a stunt
insurance bracket. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it would be classed
there are a
as a
lot
stunt,
of like complications.
Wow. So yeah, I didn't know any of this. That's pretty interesting to know. I'm gonna have to watch it again now and watch to make sure, just to see where you've got the horses and how you interact with them.
That was a major challenge that I feel like I always had in the back of my mind, was how to like make sure to maintain a certain level of production value while also adhering to these kinds of stringent constraints that were placed on us, right? So like it's about trying to find a middle ground where you're following the rules and you're not putting anybody in any sort of like financial or just straight up danger to their well-being, while also trying to make sure that the film never starts to show the seams of being ultra low budget, right? Or being shoestring or being a student film. So you want to keep that production value as high as possible so as to not distract from the story, while also making sure you're not doing anything problematic or dangerous.
Cool. Great. Yeah, no, I can imagine that can be quite a tricky thing to sort of manage and handle. But no, I say it was done well. I say there's a lot of shots going off in there as well, so I can imagine maybe as well, Brooks, you're probably sitting there going, please get it right, because I can just imagine the little dollar signs going through as each.
I'm now the one seeing the invoice every week of like number of bullets.
And that's not a joke either. Like literally every single blank costs $7 or something, right?
Yeah.
Like it's
11. It depends on a lot of things, but yeah.
So like literally every shot it cost every shot literally and figuratively is costing us money. So.
All right.
Yeah, I hate to be the like. I mean, I'm not walking out there like that costs this and that costs this, but when you're at this really low level, you have to watch for all of that. So I feel like Matt was a really good partner in knowing like how we try and get the most for the money we're spending.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. I remember when I was in the Reserve Army years ago, we had the same because we were out on the fields with the blank rifles, and being the British government, it was like we had to cost cut, so they literally gave us like 3 rounds, and they said, right, for the whole day you'd have 3 rounds. They cost too much money, you can't use them. So we're training to be soldiers here, and we've got 3 bullets, thanks. Costs too much to use. So yeah, I know the price of how much blanks cost.
There's like an old Chris Rock joke where he's doing his stand-up and he's talking about gun control. He's like, I don't care about gun control, I want to do bullet control. Like if every single bullet cost $3,000, there'd be no more innocent bystanders.
Very true, yeah. You'd be extremely careful where you point that gun. Excellent. What kind of inspired you to write Cassidy Red then? Because obviously, and the Western theme and everything like that, because it's...
Yeah, it was a genre that I can chart my sort of love or obsession or history with cinema back to discovering Westerns as a very young child, thanks to my father and then my grandfather as well. My dad introduced me to, or my grandfather introduced me to a lot of these like John Ford films or John Wayne films, and my dad introduced me to Sergio Leone movies,
okay.
which completely changed the way I looked at the genre. And I was like, I respect those John Ford movies, but I love those Sergio Leone movies. I don't know, something about the European aesthetic, not to be a self-hating American, but there's something about that sort of removed, like stylistically brazen thing that Leone was doing that just got under my skin. And I just never really had the type of story that I was excited about enough to try and attempt something that was period and involved livestock and these expensive bullets and costume, like I knew when I was going to tackle that, it needed to be done properly and it needed to be done like on a feature scale. So I kind of danced around it for many, many years before finally finding a story that I felt could do justice to the genre while also being able to, it could be told on the relatively intimate scale that a shoestring student film production could embark upon.
Excellent. No, it's fantastic just to hear the stories of this, of people coming out in the first time and how they how you sort of came about it, because this is in the year or two goes, you'll be you could be up there. I'm sure you will be as well, and it's like, you come back to it and you think how you all started and moved on. Is there anything like you could think of? So I'm in a roundabout way trying to get to the question here. Told you I ramble a lot. Is there anything that you think you could do differently next time round after doing this one?
Yeah, that's I could put together a pretty long rap sheet just of like narrative things or structural things, or way I could make it easier on our editor, for example, because he and I had to basically Frankenstein and piece together things and go back and record off-camera dialogue in order to connect a couple of dots. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of things, but I think the main thing would be to try and put ourselves in a position where we didn't have to ask for so much from so many people in such a crazy environment, just in terms of like putting people out there in this really punishing environment and then asking them to do it for free on top of that. Like throughout this whole process, I've learned that like I need to sort of educate myself in the ways of securing financing, but also educate myself in the ways of like marketing myself and marketing the project and marketing the team. And just because those are I can write the scripts, I can do what I need to do on set, I'm pretty good in the editing room, like all that sort of like nitty gritty boots on the ground stuff is not a problem. It's the networking and the financing and the publicity and the social media stuff and the crowdsourcing, like those are all the kinds of things that didn't used to be part of this job, but in today's filmmaking environment, it's part of the deal, part of the fun.
Yeah, definitely. I think social media, definitely, because I think you see a lot of the actors and directors going out on social media and like the crowdfunding. I say I've got Mark Zammit, who's a friend of mine, he's actually producing his first film as well at the moment, and he's going through the same. He's doing the crowdfunding, so they're filming a bit. Then they're waiting, obviously, maybe a couple of months until they've got the rest. And then then putting it all together again, and bringing it. So and it's all through social media that they're having to push out, and they're having to, that's. I've got another friend, actress, and she sits there constantly on social media because that's the gateway for people to get known and get out there. I think you're right, it has changed. It wasn't there. I'm not going to say how old I am, but it wasn't there when I was young. But computers were only just being invented. But so it's to come such a. But it's also a great medium as well. It might be hard, cumbersome to go through it, because I find this, from my point of view, from doing this show, I try and social media. I'm still learning it. I've been doing it for 2 years. I'm still trying to get there and figure out how to market across social media and how to bring the audience and people's engagement. So I know that struggle there, but it's also a fantastic way to get out there and reach people you may never have reached before. Because someone with a simple retweet of something will reach God knows how many other people, and it's fantastic medium to use. Yeah,
I just would like to be in a position where I didn't have to start every single email with, "I hate to have to ask you this, but," or "I need to ask you another favor," or "If you have the time to do
you
this."
You have too much shame.
Yeah, I have a lot of.
Too much.
I can't get over that. So, and basically what I'm doing this month is I'm scrambling to catch up with all this stuff. I mean, all these sorts of things that I should have been putting in place for the last year in terms of the website, the Facebook, the Twitter, whatever, like just sort of like laying the track for this release of the film is all things that if I was more educated in this, I would have been doing a long time ago. But now I'm just like, rushing to make the most of this moment that we have in order to like get the word out.
Yeah, I guess if it's a big learning curve, because if you've not done that kind of thing before, then yeah, it's a very big world out there on social media, and it can be great. I say it can be very cruel as well. I found that, but that's the whole that's the whole gambit of everything.
Yeah, I mean, it has been an opportunity too to get some positive feedback from like people who are friends of friends who have found the movie, which has been really exciting, especially, for me to like hear people who are finding the movie and enjoying it, which is cool.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you imagine that? Because obviously, people who do go out there, see the movie, goes, that must have been a huge boost for you guys to find people who are actually commenting about the film that they've seen, and it's like, to know that it's out there and people are buying it and.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, it's nice to not just be sending people, YouTube links or Vimeo links, whatever. It's nice to be able to, not that I'm looking for people to go out there and necessarily spend money. It's just nice to have platforms to be able to direct people to that look somewhat legit. So yeah. I think that makes a lot of difference in legitimizing the something that started as a student film project.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think there's that social media as well, but there's a lot more like Vimeo and Netflix and things like that. I think something that, again, that's past few years has just sort of blown out the water about different media to actually have your film shown and viewed by as well. So it's great, because it used to be on a DVD, which some people might not see, but now, say, with all the online media that people stream and things like that, you've got so many different avenues you can actually open up to, which is brilliant.
Yeah, the way that maybe 10 or 15 years ago, people were like, oh, we're the last generation to get to, actually project something on film. I guess Brooks and I will be like the last generation to actually press something on a DVD. I got all these boxes of DVDs that I've been, that I got from Sony Pictures Home Entertainment the other day, and I've been sending them out, or Kickstarter, or whoever, and I'm like, this is probably the last time I'll ever get to do this. Like, there probably will be no reason to, and that's great. That's fine. DVDs can die. I've got I don't have romantic notions about them. But I was just like, yeah, this is nice that we got to do this once, because I doubt I'll ever probably make another film that will have any reason to be pressed onto a DVD or Blu-ray.
Yeah, this will put it in perspective as well. I actually found I was in my attic yesterday. And this before we went out. I was sitting there in the morning, tried to root around. My son's got a new computer, so I had to get some wireless stuff, and I actually found a VHS of when I did Annie the musical in school. In high school, I was Drake the butler, and my mum and dad obviously put it onto VHS, and I brought it down. I was like, wow, I found the old video, and he's like, what the hell's that? I was like, yes. I was standing there with a VHS cassette, and he was like, really, what is that? I was like, yeah, thanks. Now I feel really old, but yeah, no, you're right. The media changes so much, and I say VHS used to be the big thing. Then it's DVD, now Blu-ray. We've got 4K Blu-rays as well, and streaming and online. And you're right. It just does make you wonder when the last DVD will get pressed. Which would be a shame, really, because I enjoy sitting there and putting a disc in. Because Amazon always crashes on me. Yeah.
That's fair.
Cool. Where was the film filmed? Where was it all filmed? Because of the scenery and everything like that. That's another question I had there, which I've thrown myself completely off track with you.
We shot entirely, and pretty much entirely. Most of Principal was all at Old Tucson Studios. So it's a really cool place out in Arizona. It was originally started as I think Columbia was one of the first studios out there to, put together a collection of buildings for a Western, and then a bunch of the other major studios kept repurposing those buildings and adding on until finally you have this like little Western town in the middle of Arizona. It eventually got turned into basically a theme park. So it's this little like Western world that you can walk around in, and has like all kinds of games and entertainment and stuff. And they're closed for the hot season and the monsoon season in August. So we got to basically rent out the place when it's closed to the public, and we were like, oh, it's great, it's so cheap. And everybody warned us that it would be extremely hot, and it was. But was cool is we basically had this little Western town that we got to play around in. And work with the people who are their animal wranglers and their, the guys who do the stunt shows, like the gun shows and stuff, and the girls who are the dancers at the saloon. Like, we got to work with all those people and hire them, and they have like a costume department and everything. So obviously we brought in a lot of our own stuff, but the staff that was walking around this location were great. And it's just so trippy being able to see like the chapel where the Three Amigos was filmed, like on one corner of your eye, and then like there's a little like gallows over there, and then there's a guy with a forklift carrying a piano like across the property.
Wow.
So yeah, and then we also spent some time getting like B-roll for a lot of those transition shots all around Arizona. It's a beautiful place.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, I can all imagine now sitting there going like that. The Three Amigos.
Yeah. There's something so amazing about being able to like immerse yourself in that environment, as opposed to just like going out to an empty field someplace north of LA and building fences or whatever. Like, just actually being able to like be completely overwhelmed by an environment like that. I think it was helpful for the actors. I think it was helpful for everybody. But just like something about being actually getting to like go legitimately play cowboy every single morning. I think it's just an invaluable thing in terms of putting everyone in the right mindset. So
definitely.
Like, working in an environment like that where, like Brooks is saying, they have everything ready to go for the most part, and have their own wardrobe and have their own stunt team. And I think that the crew there sort of didn't know what to make of us at first, because we were a student film production and we had asked for this really cut rate. And so I think they were kind of like thinking maybe they might have to babysit us, or maybe we might be unprofessional, or I don't know. You could tell that they were like a little unsure about how this was all going to shake out.
Yeah.
And once we proved ourselves as trustworthy and like we had a nice, well-oiled machine going, then they started just going out of their way to help, to assist, to, offer, like let us into other parts of the park. Like Rich was saying, get a forklift out and move this piano from point A to point B, move this boulder from point A to point B. I mean, basically, there was no request we had that they ever turned us down for, because I think they came to respect us, and then also sort of started having fun with the kind of story we're trying to tell. At least that's how it felt to me.
Brilliant. It must be. I mean, because that's kind of what they live for, isn't it? Though, if that's their theme park and there's a film being there, so I can imagine them getting completely involved with that. And having their own costumes. That's it does. It's completely different.
I presume that the theme park thing could probably get to be a little bit fatiguing, just because you're kind of doing the same stunt show every day. You're dealing with all the same tourists. Like, that can probably be a little bit repetitive. So I'm sure a production coming in and introducing new challenges, introducing a new story, if you will, is probably kind of exciting, I hope.
Yeah.
Kind of start to get their creative juices flowing. I mean, they could not have been better to us. Let's put it that way. I feel like we really, we really lucked out with that environment and the people that we met there.
Fantastic. That does sound really, really great. And you're right. I think location shoots where it is like that, it is a lot, different. We get the castles over here. So I know a couple of the medieval guys put them getting the castles, and they have the guys dressed as knights walking around. That's without the filming. You can go and see that. So yeah, I can just imagine with the film how there are. They've got the luxury of being able to do things like that. So out there, Western, and to go to a Western town in Arizona, see, that's my dream, is to just walk around a town like that. To be perfectly honest, I'd love to. When I come out to the States again, I want to cross the whole States, and I want to go to a proper town like that, and just Westworld, that kind of.
Yeah, I mean, for all intents and purposes, it was really working on a Western backlot for almost a month. So that made a lot more sense than trying to piecemeal together, like again, if we're shooting in LA, like, okay, we'll use this field on this day, and then we'll drive over here the next day, and we'll build a fence there, and then we'll use the facade for this ranch, but then we're going to have to go build the interior on a stage somewhere. Like, and
we can't look any farther. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, we can't look this way. Whereas there, with few exceptions, we could pretty much look 360 anytime we wanted to, because it's just in the valley, and the highways are way in the distance and pretty well hidden by the mountains. So yeah, we pretty much had an unobstructed view 360 degrees almost all the time.
The nature was pretty amazing too. Like, I know, so there's one, as I'm sure you recognize in the movie, and it was written in the script, that the two characters are looking and they're seeing this turkey vulture flying around. And I was like, oh God, Matt, you wrote a bird that we can't tame into this. You already wrote chickens in here, and I had to find a fucking chicken, which actually wasn't that big a deal. And I was like, how am I going to find this bird? And so we tried all these things over the course of the 3 weeks that we're there. Like, we even had some guys who were like doing some of our special effects. Like, oh, I'm going to I've got these chicken bones that I'm going to roast up and put on this flagpole. I'm going to lure the turkey vulture, all these things. And we tried all kinds of things. And, the foxes just ate them or whatever. And then, of course, on the very last day, we're packing everything into the truck and we're leaving and we're just going to have to buy stock footage. And suddenly, of course, we would always see the vulture when we were driving home from set. Mm-hmm. And when we didn't have a camera or all over the place in Arizona. But the very last day, our camera team was just loading into the truck, and then we saw a vulture, and they opened up all the cases and impact and built the camera in the fastest thing we've ever seen them, and just captured something live, which was so exciting. Just right outside our front door, basically, where we were staying. Yeah,
that's fantastic. Like I say, it's always sod's law that you'll miss it. Just as you pack away, you never work with children or animals, is what they say, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's little magical experiences like that. Not to be too Pollyanna or pie in the sky about the the filmmaking experience, but it is little things like that completely recharge your batteries, because we're getting up, we're going to have to drive 7 hours back to LA, everybody's hungover, everybody's exhausted, I'm thinking about all the things that we didn't get that we're going to have to pick up somewhere else, and then all of a sudden one little experience can just make you fall in love with the filmmaking experience all over again. It's oh yes, somebody's looking out for us.
Exactly.
What a perfect thing to be able to capture right before wrapping for good is that one thing, like Rick said, was written into the film, was a crucial part of the story, and yet was logistically pretty hard to map out how exactly we're going to do that. Like you said, stock footage, hire some sort of bird wrangler or falconer or something. No, we got to do it organically, which is just, I couldn't have asked for a better way to end.
Fantastic. That sounds really, really good as well. And I mean, the question I've kind of got is, obviously it's not really a question, it's more of empowerment as well, because obviously the film is very empowering to the females as well, in a male, and it's great to see, because I think this is something that's happening a lot. And if you say your film was done a couple of years ago as well, you've beaten the movement, to get there. I was speaking to someone the other day who had one about mental health awareness, and their film has been 10 years in the making, so they beat that to make beat the onslaught as well. But I really think that was very good to see, and especially towards that final showdown, which I won't spoil, but because it was just whoa. It's it all came out, and it was just it was really good. And I think that's a very nice thing to see as well in the film, is empowering and making the lead characters female and showing there is that side, and allowing that to happen, because I do think that's something that's lacked many years. We're starting to see that change now, and it is good type thing. So was that part of your prominent in mind when you're making the film as well?
I think it'd be disingenuous of me to say that there was any kind of preconceived sort of mission or anything like that, or any kind of agenda. Certainly as a heterosexual white male, I'm not the person to be sort of carrying the flame for any kind of movement like that. It was more just the idea of okay, what kinds of characters am I interested in and not seeing represented, and what am I qualified to write about from from an emotional standpoint, And the movie that I always go back to, which is the first one of the first movie books that I talked about, was a comedy actually called Cat Ballou with Jane Fonda and Lee Marvin, and basically the court character in Cassidy Red is a complete rip-off of the Lee Marvin character from Cat Ballou, and I felt like that was a character who got that one sort of very farcical represent. I mean, she's not the only woman ever portrayed in a lead role. I mean, one could make the argument that Once Upon a Time in the West is primarily about a female protagonist, or Johnny Guitar or something. But to me, Cat Ballou came the closest to actually really focusing on this person as a three-dimensional representation, and I thought she was one of the more interesting characters in the history of the genre. So I'm I want to explore more people like that. Am I qualified to do that? Can I get away with that? Am I the person? And I don't know. I mean, Brooks, do you think that, like, when you came on board, I presume that was pretty high priority for you to believe or to trust that like that sort of representation was something you actually wanted to put your name on, right? I'm not saying I'm not qualified to say whether we succeeded or not, but I'm hopeful that you still feel comfortable having your name on a film about a woman that's directed by a man.
Yeah, I mean, I think the qualities of that character were one of the things that really drew me to the script. And I remember you mentioning that you felt like this character, Joe Cassidy, was somebody born at the wrong time in history. And so it's fun to kind of see it with this like modern feel. And, you know, there are elements of the story that kind of feel like, I like to say, kind of like a 19th century superhero, you know? She's got this like bright red hair. And there are things that are like not meant to be super realistic in the way that a Western is plays on all of that. You know, we're not trying to make some kind of historical document. So I loved the feeling of what could you do if like I could go back in time and be that kind of person and like live with some of the values that I would hope that some young girl would grow up with today, which is kind of fun. And I always found that to be really imaginative and enjoyable to kind of see that acted out on screen.
Well, the one I would like my most insecure moment, which then transitioned to one of my more secure moments, was actually when we were driving back from our first scout, and I was in the car with 4 women, one of whom was the AD, one of whom was the production designer. I can't remember who was in the car, but it was I was driving and it was all women in the car. Yeah, and I asked our AD Chelsea, I was like, I need you to be really, really honest with me. When she does this whole rigmarole where she dyes her hair, which is kind of like, I don't know, a centerpiece of the film, really. It's a pretty important transitional moment. Mm-hmm. As a woman, does that feel like this is a man making a big deal out of basically a Wild West makeover? Like, is that what this is going to come across as? Like, is this going to be really patronizing, that she's basically like, she gets a makeover and then she's ready to like go, you know, seek her revenge? And Chelsea thought about it for a second. She's like, no, it doesn't feel like a makeover. It feels like her putting on war paint or something. It feels like her preparing for battle by making a change, making some sort of aesthetic change. But it's not for beauty's sake or anything. It is primarily so that she can feel like she's empowering herself so that she can go to war.
Every girl takes off her glasses and suddenly the boys like her, you know?
Yeah.
So when Chelsea said she was comfortable with that and she felt like she could sort of like reconcile it in her own mind, that gave me a certain amount of confidence that maybe we were on the right track and maybe I wasn't going to completely embarrass myself and embarrass everyone else. And I feel like that is one of the more effective and successful elements of the film, is that transition, you know. And then the fact that she basically has, she's before Red and after Red, if you will, BR and AR, whatever you want to call it. I think it works, and it's one of the things that I'm most proud of because it also, I think, is very strong visually.
Definitely.
And, obviously, it gives us a strong title too.
Well, yeah. Excellent.
It's always that.
Very true. Now, obviously, I know you need to move on. So, it's in the final sort of wrap up, is there anything that you'd like to say to people? Maybe some advice or anything that you'd like to say to people who are watching or listening to this right now?
I think that there's so many steps in this process, whether it takes you a year, whether it takes you 3 years, like you said, whether it takes you a decade. Because I hear that, more often than not, feature development, even at a studio level, is sometimes a 5 to 10 year idea. I just think it's important that, like, even in those darkest moments, and I've had my share, and I probably will still have some over the course of the next few months as we roll this thing out. I think it's just important to, like, always remind yourself that, like, you wanted to do this. Like, this was the dream, this was the plan, and it wasn't always going to be, it wasn't always going to be those fun moments where you catch the vulture in just the right time. There's going to be plenty of times where you're walking around the set, looking at your shoes, wondering why there are no vultures in the sky. And I think that all needs to be part of the process. And that's something I keep trying to remind myself of through all this, is like, even when I'm feeling like there's a dark rain cloud over my head for whatever reason, just like, this is all part of this, like, artistic journey or whatever. And I think people need to, like, step back and realize they're not going to love the script every day. They're not going to love the cut every day. They're not going to love the reviews some of the times. But I think you got to just you got to swallow that stuff up and digest it, because it's all part of the fun. What do you think, Brooks?
I think my piece of advice would be very similar. I mean, I think the only thing I would add is it's important to have a good partner. So it's been really fun to work with Matt on this as like, you know, equal collaborators for so long, and like being able to trust that we could do this over the long haul. And it seems like when I'm having a good day, he's usually having the bad day. When I'm having the bad day, he's having the good day. And so we're able to kind of piggyback off of each other. Luckily, so far, meltdowns have never happened at the same time. But I think what you said about, like, you know, it's not every day is the turkey vulture day. I would just add, you know, one thing I always tell people is when we were shooting, it was monsoon season, you know, part of why we got it so cheap and why everybody shuts down in Arizona. So, of course, it rained every day we were shooting, except for the one day that we shot our rain scene. No. You know, that's the rain. That's not just a day where we capitalized on the rain. That's us with a hose on the roof. And so, yeah, a lot of the time it's you know, it's flash monsoons. But that's part of what filmmaking is, and it's about being able to see the bright points and to work with each other to persevere, which I think has been really rewarding.
I would even offer that, like, there's probably going to be more non-vulture days than there are going to be vulture days. But I think that the one vulture day is actually going to make up for the 10 non-vulture days. You know, like I think that it's not just necessarily going to be an algorithmic thing. It's not like I'm going to have a good day and a bad day and a good day and a bad day. It's that good day is going to be so good, it may potentially make up for the previous 5 bad ones. And it's going to remind you why you want to do this in the first place. Just have to keep remembering that it will eventually get to that point. That eventually the rain will stop and the vulture will show up.
Thanks, Brooke, and thanks, Matt, for a fantastic chat. Really enjoyed talking to you and love the movie as well, Cassidy Red. So go out there and watch it, everybody. Hope you've all enjoyed listening and watching this too. This has been Chris Gordon with Matt Knudsen and Brooks Yang from Cassidy Red. Catch you next time.